Good evening, coach. So, thanks a lot for taking time out for this particular chat. Uh, I know you you have a busy schedule, so thanks a lot for taking time out. First of all.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Renjith. I'm honored to be invited by you and Locker Room.
Okay, so before we start with the MFN card, you launched your site today. Like I saw your Facebook post regarding your site. So, before we start with the card, do you want to say something to about the site to the audience that are watching?
Yeah, I've been just involved with so many things the last like 20 years or so. Whether it's my spiritual ministry, whether it's been coaching, whether it's been promoting shows, whether it's been doing consultancy for events, training officials, training fighters. Just there's been so many things, and I thought it was about time that I kind of put one website where everybody who's looking for whether it's information or whether to reach me out, there's one portal where everybody can reach me. So I was like, I think this is the right time to finally get the website in place. So I request everybody, please go and check out danisaac.com and get to read all the stuff that I've been doing.
Awesome. Awesome. So, will there be updates on the website, or will this be the only format?
Yeah, this will be the primary format for people to get like the basic information, but I'm hoping to add a couple of more new links to it. Like first of all, I want to have options for people to train, like whether I'm in the US or in India, people can do any online training, whether it's for training rules and regulations, or just doing like a boxing class, doing a fitness class. I want to have access for people to go to the site and then reach out to me even for training. So yeah, there'll be a bunch of new things, including updates and news and things like that as well.
Awesome. So that's danisaac.com.
DanIsaac.com. You can go to DanIsaac.com. You can go to CoachDanIsaac.com. You can go to PastorIsaac.DanIsaac.com. It'll all lead you to the same thing.
Awesome, awesome. So great. So now come back to MFN, like our topic for today. So
Yes.
MFN 5. We had a great card. We had a great event, some awesome fights. So we start with the preliminary card. We had six great newcomers, like promotional newcomers on the card, and three great fights. So what was your biggest takeaway from the preliminary card?
So, obviously there were different range of fighters on that preliminary card. If you look at fighters who have been just active on the amateur scene, and then taking this big step, obviously it was evident that they were facing the big lights. They were facing this new crowd in a new country with the cameras and everything. It definitely impacts how the fighter performs. So I think out of the three fights, I think two of the fights definitely showed their experience in MMA. People who watched the preliminary fights and then people who watched the co-main and the main, they could literally see the levels that Indian MMA has evolved through. But at the same time, even on the preliminary fights, it was good to see some complete mixed martial arts in their competition. I would definitely say, when Musa was trying to take Bon Jovi's back, there was so many technical flaws in what he was doing. And anyone who knows, proper jujitsu will definitely recognize the flaws. But then that's the whole point of them being amateur fighters. So when I talk about Musa and Bon Jovi, and then when I talk about Karan Lama and Anthony Sam, you'll definitely see levels of good amateurs taking that step. But good fights, regardless. The crowd was enjoying their fights. But when I talk about Clinton and Abhimanyu, those guys literally had everybody on their feet. Now, my role with MFN at this show was as GAMAF representative. So I'm working with the IMO officials to ensure that all the rules and regulations are in place. I'm standing cage side. And for me to watch Clinton get rocked twice. Once was when Abhimanyu landed those elbows to the side of the head in the standing position while Clinton was trying to take him down off of the cage. And the second time in round two, when Clinton came forward and Abhimanyu landed a big overhand. Watching Clinton absorb those shots and still just continue to be relentless, take him down, and then slap on that submission, it just showed me, it made me proud of where Indian MMA is. Um, I'm proud of Clinton. I'm proud of Abhimanyu. These guys definitely put on a show. But when I spoke to, Jitesh, that's Clinton's coach, before
Mm-hmm.
the fight, he said Clinton wants to take this fight all 3 rounds. I don't think that necessarily materialized, because Abhimanyu proved himself to be
Yes.
a hardcore opponent. Abhimanyu is no joke. He's a tough kid, and I think he definitely has a place among the, if we categorize like the C-level pros in India, I think he definitely has a place. But yeah, the preliminary card was great. These two guys, I think, stood out on that preliminary card, and then the rest you guys have already seen.
Okay, so interesting, like you brought up that elbow part. We saw a lot of comments saying that those elbows were illegal, like 12 to 6 elbows. But
Yeah.
from what I understand, GAMAF has a different rule set. So could you throw some light on that whole
Yeah,
situation?
I mean, any elbows which are being downward. So as long as the elbows are going from top to bottom, this is illegal. But
Mhm.
if you're on your back, or you're even being picked up to slam, if you're using your elbows from downward going up, that's totally fine with GAMAF. So whether it's being used in a side way, whether it's coming down here, if you're on your back and going upward, that's totally fine. But when the elbows are going downwards, that is illegal.
Okay, so one more thing regarding the rule set from GAMAF. I think there's an option for the coaches to call for a review if it's an early stoppage or something. Like, could you tell something about that as well? Because I think Siddharth Singh maybe called for that regarding in between the Angad Sumit fight. So can you just
Yes.
tell about a bit about that as well?
Yes. So one of the things that GAMAF tries to do, and believe me, I'm hoping over the next few GAMAF sanctioned events, we will be able to shed more light on where are the changes that GAMAF has made with its rule set. And then yes, as you mentioned, one of the primary differences between the GAMAF global rules and unified rules is the GAMAF restart rule. So according to the rules, there's only one criteria when a cornerman or a fighter can ask for a restart. It happens when there's a TKO referee stoppage. It cannot happen when the doctor stops the fight. It cannot happen in a knockout. It can only happen when there is a referee stoppage. So this criteria, what it does is it allows the cornerman to raise a red flag. And when he raises the red flag, he draws attention to the judge committee and asks to restart the fight, because they feel this is a premature stoppage or an early stoppage. What happens then in that situation is the timekeeper announces the GAMAF restart timekeeping is now in effect. So he starts a 2-minute time during which the fight is paused, and the referees, because we don't have just one referee inside the cage, we have additional 3 referees around that are getting a multi-dimensional view. So the referees immediately are required to have a 1-minute meeting, and then if required, they look at the monitor and decide if there was a legitimate reason to restart the fight. So if the other referees, along with the event commissioner, agree that this was premature, then the referee comes back inside and says this fight will be restarted. But if they feel that the referee's call was legitimate, then they will step in and say this fight will not be restarted, and they have to explain why they did not restart to the cornerman. So what happened in this situation was that flying knee landed uh, clean. If you see the pictures on
Yes.
Facebook, it landed clean at the side of the jaw. Um, Angad had what we call a flash knockout. He was temporarily stunned, and after that knee was landed, for a bit of the next couple of minutes, Angad first asked the referee what happened. Then he went to his corner and asked what happened. So the referees around the corner, they identified that, they saw that, and when we spoke, they said that Angad asked what happened, and that in itself means he was temporarily disillusioned. So I walked up to Siddharth and I said, although you did ask for a restart, we did not offer that restart option because we felt the fighter was disillusioned, and so it is not a TKO, it's actually a knockout. And so we clarified that and then decided that the fight was not going to be restarted.
Oh, so that fight between Sumit and Angad was the opening of the main card. And were you expecting a knockout in this fight?
I'm telling you, Sumit is such a next level fighter, Rajit. It's really amazing to see how this kid, he just blew us away with that first head kick that he landed on Pawan Goyat at the previous MFN, and now here with this flying knee, he actually predicted this. Can you believe it?
Mhm.
MFN will be putting out that video, his interview, hopefully within the next few days. But the day before, I was talking to all the fighters and the cameras were following me. And I asked Sumit, I said, hey, you are one of the guys who has been to, Jackson Wink. You have trained with some of, the top level UFC fighters. What's your take on that training? How are you going to use that strategy? And he says, I'm going to use something that nobody has seen in Indian MMA. He says, I'm going to switch levels, I'm going to switch angles, and I'm going to knock him out. And that's exactly what he did. He switched angles and threw that flying knee. But I did, yeah, to answer your question, I did not expect that.
Okay, so what do you think is next for Sumit and Angad? Like, Angad obviously had a bad day at the office, and Sumit again produced another knockout. What do you think, according to you, would be next for these two?
So, I personally feel, and I'm sure you've seen that post of mine on Instagram where I said, don't jump the UFC gun too soon,
Mhm.
boys. I think there's still a lot for all these fighters to compete
Mhm.
at this level because
Mhm.
remember, we're coming off like a full year of no fights,
Yes.
almost a full year. And then also between the last, SFL season and MFN, there's been a gap. So I would for sure, I would see all of these guys competing against their
Mhm.
level opponents, at least for the next, I would say, couple of years, before they are ready to step to, maybe, international fighters. But I think all of these weight classes are stacked with some real interesting fights. I mean, come on. It's literally
Mhm.
anybody's game. I think all of these guys have got a fair share of opponents and next level chances. I think the next few MFN cards are going to be really exciting.
Awesome. Now the next fight on the card was between Chaitanya and Sanjeev. So again, like this ended quickly. Like we were expecting a long fight comparing the resume that these two had. Like, what are your thoughts on that fight?
Sanjeev is just he's like a beast. If you would have seen Sanjeev throughout the days of the events, his face is as cold and focused as he's in the ring as when he walks up to the buffet to eat his meal. He's that focused. He's literally like a cyborg. This guy is just, I think he's one of the guys that God put on this earth just to be a warrior. If he was like back in the days, the days of warriors, he'll be with his sword fighting on the battlefield. The guy is really focused, and I think he knew that Chaitanya was definitely going to do a couple of fakes and then shoot in
Mhm.
for the takedown. And just because his wrestling is so strong and he comes from pure boxing and pure wrestling, I think that he was unfazed. For him, it was, if he's going to shoot for me, he cannot take me down. So I'm just going to smash him. And he found a hole in Chaitanya's defense, and he was able to land. The moment that body shot landed, that was the beginning of the end.
Okay, so uh, what do you see next for Sanjeev then? Similar to the question, like what matchup at featherweight would be next for him in MFN?
I think there's still a lot to be reviewed. I think there's a lot to be figured out as to what MFN plans to do, because if
Mhm.
MFN wants to put up belts and title fights,
Mhm.
then they'll still have to have these guys fight against each other,
Yes.
to become belt worthy. So I think all of the weight categories are stacked. I don't want to make any predictions right now, but I know that there's going to be a lot of interesting fights, and I think all of these fights that happen over the next few MFNs are going to be as interesting as what happened at MFN 5.
Okay, so after the Chaitanya Sanjeev fight, we had the fight between Jason and Ravinder. Now, Jason was coming into the fight on the back of two losses. Like he has not won in, I mean, he had not won in MFN till then, and then he comes in and picks up a triangle submission. Like, how do you see that comeback from Jason?
Well, honestly, and no offense to Jason, but the body language that I saw of Jason during this event, before the fight, I was kind of worried. He didn't seem to be as focused as he was in other previous fights. Whereas Ravinder came in completely focused. He was training throughout. But I think what's highlighted in that fight is the that fine line that Indian MMA has kind of evolved.
Hmm.
Indian MMA before, I would say, before 2015, had these one-dimensional fighters. It was the place where, like a gold medalist in wushu could win in MMA. Like a judo player, like Balhara could win in Indian MMA. I think now things are changed. And I think what this fight demonstrated is now there's a level of Indian fighters that understand the complete mixed martial arts game. They understand transitions, they understand takedowns, they understand submissions, they understand how to be patient. So it's no more two guys slugging and just smashing each other who are going to establish what Indian MMA is. Now is the time of the complete Indian MMA fighter. And I think because Jason kind of made that switch, like literally, if you watched him when he started fighting, he went from zero to like beast. His eyes he just had crazy eyes. He was calm, he was patient, and then slapped on that triangle. And, Ravinder just tapped out without Jason even actually completing the triangle. So it just shows that if the one dimensional fighters do not make that evolution over to being a complete MMA fighter, their time is over. All the guys who are one dimensional, if they were just boxers, just judo guys, just wushu guys, if they're not going to make a change in their game, their time is over. Because now is the time of the complete MMA fighters. So if you're not a complete MMA fighter, I don't think you're going to have your place in Indian MMA anymore.
Okay, so if you see that fight, like Jason seemed to have a clear game plan in place. Like he was keeping all the right hands that Ravindra was throwing, and he was just waiting for that submission. Do you think he planned to win it on the ground?
I think he knew that was his only way to win this fight. Because, again, as I mentioned, there are these fighters who are just completely one dimensional. When they're on the ground, they're just going to be trying to survive and get back on their feet. They're not going to stand and try to pass guard or try to, escape a submission. They just want to avoid that, survive and stand. That's like old school striker mentality. So that is the mentality that Ravinder had. And while Jason was fighting more as a complete fighter, even in the stand up, if you watch, Jason's strategy was to allow Ravinder to attack while Jason was going to use the cage on his back just because he knew he was taller to try and do the clinch and land those Muay Thai knees. So, because he frustrated Ravinder, he was able to even show superior MMA striking even while in the standing.
Okay, so then like we had the main event between Anshul and Srikanth. So there was a lot of hype behind this fight, and Anshul totally dominated. Like Srikanth showed a lot of heart by withstanding those two Kimuras. So you were the referee for that match, if I'm right. So how was the 1 second, 1 second. Okay, so is it still hearing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I got a call. So coming back, you were the referee for that particular fight. So you had the best best seat in the house. So how was that match for you?
I was talking to Srikanth throughout the time. I asked him not once but three different times. I said, "Are you okay, Srikanth? Do you ready to continue? Are you good to go?" And he answered me, Renjith. He answered me saying, yeah, I'm good. That's the tone that he answered. He was not even, if he had to go like, oh, I'm good, I might have stopped that. But he literally was like, yeah, I'm good. I mean, with his arm just completely twisted backwards, he was just talking normally to me. So I was watching that. I knew that he's been in that position hundreds of times. He's just learned to survive in that position, but it was nasty. It was painful to watch. It kind of frustrated Anshul, because I spoke to Anshul after the fight, and he said, according to me, I did everything that was textbook correct, but it just didn't work. So, hats off to Srikanth for that. But that was painful, man. It was painful to watch.
So what do you think of the performance of Anshul? Like he made a huge statement with that win.
It was a huge statement for sure. But this kid, I think a lot of people might not have known him for a
Mhm.
while. When I was at at the MFN show just a couple of days before the actual show happened, I was sitting down with Siddharth, his coach, and I showed him a WhatsApp message. I said, "Remember this message you sent to me a few years ago? You wanted Anshul to fight in the IMA Nationals," and he said, "I've got this promising kid," and he was like, "Yeah, I remember that message." I said, this kid has made his way up the ranks. He successfully competed at the nationals, made the transition to professional MMA, and what he has is a complete game. Um, it was not just the takedowns. Even when they were in the standing, I watched when Srikanth was throwing those shots, and every punch that Srikanth threw had bad intentions. It was not just supposed to just kind of just play touch. Each shot had bad intentions, but the difference of Srikanth's punches and Anshul's punches were that Anshul's punches were landing clean and clear. And so each punch that Anshul landed rocked Srikanth. Whereas Srikanth's punches were kind of missing the target, not landing properly on the chin, it was more hitting the side of the head. And so because Anshul's technique was, I would say flawless in the standing, they were talking to each other while they were in the stand up. In round three, Anshul actually looked at him and said, "You want to stand and bang? Let's go." That's what they were talking. And Srikanth was like, "Yeah, let's go, man. Let's go." So there was so much of hostility and violence in that fight, but it transitioned to beautiful mixed martial arts. And even at the end, like I'm not sure if you know this, but there was some trash talk going on
Mhm.
between Anshul and Jitesh Banjan, that's Srikanth's coach. There was at one point that Anshul took Srikanth towards the cage, towards where Jitesh Banjan was, and he was like, "Jitesh, is that all you got?" And then Jitesh was like, "Anshul, we will get back to you, man. I promise we'll get back to you." And he was like, "You have anything else to tell him to fight off of his back?" Boom, landed an elbow. "You have anything else to say?" So there was a lot of that going on. Um, but at the end, when the fight was over, Anshul walked over. He respected the fighter, he respected the coach, and at the fight level, everything was pure martial arts, and that was beautiful and that was excellent, and I think everybody loved that.
In the post fight in the interview also, I think Anshul gave a lot of credit to Srikanth, and Srikanth then came out and said that this won't happen again. So do you think there's a room for a rematch somewhere like in the future?
Um, I don't know how to answer that, because I'm not sure whether Srikanth just kind
Mhm.
of showed too much of his game with all of those videos and everything that he made. Maybe
Mhm.
that wasn't a good idea, because Anshul and his team had so much to study about him.
Mhm.
Like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, yes.
They put out so many videos of all his aspects of his training. I think that kind of showed a lot about him. Maybe Srikanth underestimated this opponent, and maybe he should have had a little bit more, you know, secretive, elusive training camp and not show that much. I really don't know, because these guys right now are so unpredictable. Whether Srikanth does have the ability to come back and avenge this loss, or whether Anshul will just switch levels higher, just dominate the next fight as well. I really don't know how to answer that question, Ranjit.
Okay, and I saw your post on Instagram saying that you uh, called Anshul the complete fighter in Indian MMA. So what made you do that? Like, do you think he is the complete fighter in Indian MMA at this moment?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think he's one of the top five complete MMA fighters.
Mm.
There's a few guys that can actually be called complete MMA fighters who are actually studying all the aspects of mixed martial arts. But yeah, Anshul definitely has all the tools. He's like at that point, if he just gets the right kind of guidance, if he's patient, if he's mature, and if he takes the right steps, I think in the next few years, this kid could dominate not just Indian MMA but international MMA.
Awesome. Now, lastly, coming to the main event, Pawan Man and Sandeep. Like there was a lot of buzz regarding the what happened at MFN 3 ended in a draw. Like there was a explanation regarding how the point was taken, everything. So there was a lot of things happening, and each fighter like had their own reasons to win that fight. This one also you were the referee. So can you tell us about the experience of that fight?
Yeah, I was not the referee for the
Yes,
fight before. Yeah, but I was the referee for this one.
yes.
And I think what I did was, Pavan Pavan Man is actually a really respectful fighter, and he's one of the guys that I kind of mentored and gave an opportunity during the SFL days, and he always respects and regards me for that, and I appreciate that for him. But after what happened at his last fight with him and Sandeep, him and I did not talk for a while. Rather, he stopped talking to me because he was upset about what happened. And outside of the cage, when that fight happened, I think some of the cameras captured that as well. He came up to me and he said, that he felt that that was a nonsense decision and everything. And I said, look, the papers and the points and the scorecards makes me to make that decision. And what you guys don't understand is that you were winning by that 1 point, and when that point was taken away, it got called a draw. And I tried to explain, but he was not in that state of mind, and then that entire craziness started on Instagram and everything else. So I just kind of just let things be. But before this show happened, I reached out to both the fighters. I reached out to Pawan and I reached out to Sandeep. I said, hey, I would like to be the referee for this fight. I'm gonna, speak to MFN and say I want to referee this fight because I feel I was part of this entire controversy, and I would like to be part of it to close this controversy. And I told both fighters, I said, I'm gonna give the both of you as much as chance as you guys to stay in that fight and finish it. I'll give both of you all the opportunity. But if I see that the guy who's being attacked is safe, I'll give you the chance. But if I see you're getting hurt, I'll call out to you and tell you to defend yourself. And if not, I'll stop the fight. And at that particular point, that people are wondering why I didn't stop the fight, I was this close because some of the punches were going through, some of them were missing and landing on Sandeep's arms. And just about when I was thinking whether, I asked Sandeep, defend yourself, you're good to go. But just when I was about to step in, Sandeep spun around on his back, which still showed he was still active. So I think both guys are, they're really tough fighters. I would not say that the both of them are complete MMA fighters. They're both just brawlers. They just
Mhm.
got solid hands. Um, but it was interesting to watch. It was fun for the audience, and I think it kind of both fighters have closure now. There's no reason for the both of them to say one guy was robbed or cheated. I think both understand that it was a clear and fair victory, and I was happy to be a referee for that fight and see this controversy close.
Okay, so one thing regarding Pavan, in the last 10 seconds, like he knew that he won the fight, so he just started to like escape the um, punches. And similarly, before I think before the fight, he was talking that he worked a lot on its jiu-jitsu, like ground game. So, do you think people like underestimate Pavan Man and the intelligence that he has as a fighter?
Are you talking about Pawan Man's ground
Pavan
game?
Man. No, no. His intelligence as a fighter, like he had it planned. Like he worked on his ground game throughout his camp. Then he like escaped Sandeep when he knew that he had the upper hand in the point. So, do you think like a lot of people underestimate Pawan Man's intelligence as a fighter.
I think Pawan Man is a smart fighter. I think
Mhm,
he definitely has fighter IQ, good level
mhm,
fighter IQ, but he still fits on that borderline between the
mhm,
one-dimensional fighters, and he still is not considered as part of those complete fighters. And I don't say this out of disrespect. I
mhm,
say it out of awareness. And I've mentioned that in that same Instagram post of mine where I said I feel Pawan is one of those guys can be devastating if he would just spend 6 months to a year of studying, just how to defend jujitsu, just anti jujitsu, just surviving submission techniques. But he's still one of those fighters who depends on his boxing to fight in MMA. And I think that has his limitations, but he is a smart fighter. Yes, he's a tough guy, he's a smart fighter. Um, if you put him in the category of those one-dimensional fighters, the boxers, the wushu guys, the wrestlers, the judo guys, he will dominate. But if he had to have a guy who's more complete, like Anshul, but if there was an Anshul in his weight category, it would be a different story, I'm sure.
Okay, so that's the fight card. So as a whole, like, what were your thoughts on MFN 5? Like, it was a huge event. Like, it drew a lot of eyeballs. It made all the right kind of sense. Like, what's your final like overview of the event?
I think the overview was really good just because we came off of the lockdown period and just coming off of the pandemic. The amount of tests that we took during the event was unreal. We were almost tested every day.
Mhm,
The kind of safety protocol, Dubai Sports Council, GAMAF, everybody was just coming together to make everything safe, um, you know, healthy for everybody. And I think at all levels, I think we kind of took a step up, whether it was officiating, fighter performance, MFN as a promotion, and I think the overall Indian mixed martial arts. I think it was a step up. And what was really great is that this step up was not done while in India, it was done while in a foreign country.
mhm.
So I think it was the right timing, great location, and I think Matrix Fight Night is doing a fantastic job leading Indian MMA right now.
Okay, so lastly, before we close, are there any particular fights from this particular set of fighters from MFN 5 that you want to see in the MFN 6, MFN 7, or MFN 8?
Ah, there are a bunch of different fights. I don't know if I want to say that here now, but I think I think I would like to see how Anshul would survive against Sanjeet Budwar in a rematch.
Rematch.
I think that would be whether there's going to be now or later. It's a different point. I think Sanjeet is one of those fights. If you watch his last few fights, he literally has switched levels. From the first time he fought Anup Kumar to now, you see it's a completely different game. He's like a smart wrestler and he's really strong. So I would like to see if there would be any change in Sanjeet's game. I think that would be an interesting matchup. I would like to see uh, Sumit Khade face another really good striker. I don't know who that would be. Maybe the next best striker in his category because he's fought a lot of grapplers and he's done pretty well. Maybe he needs somebody who's better who better understands striking. But yeah, I think these three guys are interesting for me to see whether they fight each other or fight other guys. I would like to see how they would rank in their performance.
Awesome. So, coach, thanks once again for taking time out for this particular chat. So, all the best for the upcoming events. And once again, thanks a lot. So, happy Christmas for you and your family as well.
Merry Christmas, Ranjit. Thanks again. I'm always glad to talk to you guys, and have a great rest of your 2020, and hopefully 2021 will be better for all of Indian MMA.
Okay, thanks a lot. And looking forward to having a chat with you soon again.
Thank you, Ranjit.
Thanks. Bye.
Good.